A cat saves a family from a fire, and the heroic ACT will leave you in awe. In the quaint town of Maplewood, where the streets were lined with cherry blossom trees and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, lived a family that seemed to embody the essence of happiness. The Johnsons, Sarah, a dedicated nurse, her husband, Tom, a high school teacher, and their 2 children, Lily and Max, shared a cozy home that radiated warmth and laughter. But it was not just the family that made their house a home, it was also their beloved cat. Whiskers. Whiskers was no ordinary cat. With his striking green eyes and a coat as soft as a cloud, he had a personality that could light up the darkest of days. He was playful yet wise, often found perched on the windowsill, watching the world go by with an air of regal curiosity. To the Johnsons, Whiskers was more than a pet, he was a member of the family. A confidant to Lily, a playmate for Max, and a source of comfort for Sarah and Tom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Maplewood, the Johnsons gathered in their living room for their nightly ritual. The children sprawled on the floor, surrounded by toys, while Sarah and Tom shared a quiet moment on the couch, sipping tea and discussing their day. Whiskers, ever the observer, lounged lazily on the armrest, his tail flicking gently as he listened to the familiar sounds of his family. But that night, an unsettling feeling hung in the air. A sense of foreboding that seemed to seep through the walls of their home. Sarah had just finished her shift at the hospital, and fatigue weighed heavily on her. Tom, sensing her weariness, suggested they all head to bed early. The children protested, wanting to stay up a little longer, but eventually they succumbed to their parents' wishes. As the family settled into their respective rooms, Whiskers remained vigilant, his instincts alerting him to something amiss. He prowled through the house, his paws silent against the wooden floors, until he reached the kitchen. There, a faint smell of smoke wafted through the air, a scent that sent a shiver down his spine. Whiskers' ears perked up, and he darted toward the source, his heart racing. In the basement, an old electrical wire had sparked, igniting a small fire that began to spread. The flames flickered hungrily, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Whiskers, sensing the danger, knew he had to act fast. He raced back upstairs, his instincts guiding him to the children's room first. Lily, a bright-eyed 8-year-old with a wild imagination, was fast asleep, her dreams filled with adventures. Max, her younger brother, was curled up beside her, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Whiskers leaped onto the bed, nudging Lily's face with his paw, his meow urgent and insistent. "Whiskers, what's wrong?" Lily mumbled, rubbing her eyes. But before she could fully awaken, the acrid smell of smoke filled the room, jolting her into alertness. She sat up, her heart pounding as she glanced at Max, who was still blissfully unaware. "Max, wake up," she shouted, shaking him gently. Whiskers continued to meow, his voice rising in pitch as he jumped down and darted toward the door, looking back to ensure the children followed. "Come on," Lily urged, scrambling out of bed. As they stumbled into the hallway, the smoke thickened, swirling around them like a living entity. Whiskers led the way, his small frame darting through the haze, guiding them toward the stairs. "Mom! Dad!" Lily cried, her voice trembling with fear. They reached the top of the stairs, and the sight that greeted them was terrifying. Flames licked at the walls, and the heat was palpable. Tom and Sarah emerged from their bedroom, their faces etched with confusion and alarm. "Get out, now!" Tom shouted, his voice booming over the chaos. Whiskers, undeterred by the flames, dashed back toward the kitchen, where the fire raged. He knew he had to do something, to save his family from the impending doom. Whiskers, no! Sarah cried, but the cat was already on a mission. In a moment of sheer bravery, Whiskers leaped onto the kitchen counter, knocking over a glass of water that spilled onto the flames, hissing as it made contact. The fire sputtered momentarily, giving the family a precious few seconds to escape. "Follow him," Tom yelled, pointing toward the door. With Whiskers leading the way, the Johnsons rushed down the stairs, their hearts pounding in unison. The world outside was a stark contrast to the chaos inside. The night was calm, the stars twinkling overhead as if unaware of the turmoil unfolding in the Johnson home. As they reached the front yard, the family collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. Whiskers, panting and wide-eyed, stood protectively in front of them, his fur singed but his spirit unbroken. "Is everyone okay?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she looked at her family. "I think so," Tom replied, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. But as they sat there, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The fire department arrived moments later, their sirens wailing through the night. But the Johnsons knew they had Whiskers to thank for their lives. In that moment, as they huddled together, the bond between them and their feline hero deepened. Whiskers had not only saved them from the flames but had also shown them the true meaning of bravery and loyalty. The aftermath of the fire left the Johnson family in a state of shock. As the fire department worked tirelessly to extinguish the remaining embers and assess the damage, the reality of their situation began to settle in. Their home, once a sanctuary filled with laughter and love, was now a charred shell of its former self. Sarah wrapped her arms around Lily and Max, who clung to her tightly, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. Whiskers, still on high alert, paced around them, occasionally glancing back at the house as if ensuring it was truly safe. "Mom, is our house going to be okay?" Lily asked, her voice small and trembling. Sarah knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we're safe. And that's what matters right now." Tom stood nearby, speaking with the fire chief, a burly man with a kind face. "It looks like the fire started in the basement due to an electrical issue," the chief explained, his voice steady. "We'll need to investigate further, but it's likely your home will need extensive repairs. Can we stay there?" Max piped up, his innocent question cutting through the tension. The chief exchanged a glance with Tom, who sighed heavily. "For now, it's best to find somewhere safe to stay. The smoke damage is significant, and we don't want to risk your health." As the reality of their situation sank in, the Johnsons were taken to a nearby community center, where families affected by the fire were being temporarily housed. The atmosphere was somber, filled with the sounds of hushed conversations and the occasional cry of a child. Inside the center, they were given blankets and warm meals, but the comfort was fleeting. The children were restless, their minds racing with thoughts of their home and the toys they had lost. Whiskers, sensing their distress, curled up in Lily's lap, purring softly as if to reassure her. "Whiskers, you're our hero," Lily whispered, her fingers gently stroking his fur. "You saved us." Max nodded, his eyes wide with admiration. "Yeah, you're like a superhero." Tom and Sarah exchanged a glance, their hearts swelling with gratitude for their feline companion. Whiskers had acted on instinct, and in doing so, he had saved their lives. As the days passed, the Johnsons struggled to adjust to their new reality. They spent their days at the community center, surrounded by other families who had lost their homes. The children attended makeshift classes organized by volunteers, while Sarah and Tom worked to find a more permanent solution. Despite the chaos, Whiskers remained a constant source of comfort. He would curl up beside the children at night, his presence a soothing balm for their frayed nerves. But as the days turned into weeks, the weight of their loss began to take its toll. One evening, as they sat together in the community center, Lily spoke up. "Mom, when can we go home?" Sarah's heart ached at the question. "I don't know, honey. We're working on it, but it might take some time." Max, ever the optimist, chimed in. "Maybe we can build a new house. A super cool one with a slide." Tom chuckled softly, trying to lighten the mood. "That sounds like a great idea, buddy. We can make it even better than before." But deep down, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. The thought of rebuilding their lives felt overwhelming, and she often found herself staring out the window, lost in thought. One night, as she lay in the makeshift bed at the community center, she heard a soft meow beside her. Whiskers had jumped onto her bed, nuzzling against her arm. She smiled, feeling a wave of warmth wash over her. "Thank you, Whiskers," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You've been so brave." The cat looked up at her, his green eyes shining with understanding. In that moment, Sarah realized that they were not alone in this journey. They had each other, and together, they would find a way to heal. As the weeks went by, the Johnsons began to forge new connections within the community. They met other families who had faced similar tragedies, sharing stories and offering support. Whiskers became a beloved figure in the center, often entertaining the children with his antics, bringing smiles to faces that had once been filled with sorrow. One day, while helping organize donations for the families, Sarah met a woman named Clara, who had lost her home in the same fire. Clara was warm and compassionate, and the two quickly bonded over their shared experiences. "I can't believe how much we've lost," Clara said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I'm grateful for my kids and my dog. They keep me going." Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "We're lucky to have our pets. They really do help us through the tough times." As they talked, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this experience, as devastating as it was, could lead to something new and beautiful. Meanwhile, Tom worked tirelessly to secure temporary housing for the family. After weeks of searching, he finally found a small rental home on the outskirts of Maplewood. It wasn't much, but it was a place they could call their own while their house was being repaired. The day they moved into the rental felt bittersweet. The children were excited to have their own space again, but the memories of their old home lingered like shadows. Whiskers, however, seemed to adapt quickly, exploring every nook and cranny with curiosity. "Look, Whiskers, this is our new home," Max exclaimed, chasing the cat around the living room. Lily giggled, her spirits lifting as she watched her brother play. "Maybe we can make new memories here." As the days turned into weeks, the Johnsons began to settle into their new routine. They decorated the rental with their favorite pictures and toys, slowly transforming it into a home. Whiskers remained a constant presence, his playful antics bringing laughter back into their lives. But just as they began to feel a sense of normalcy, a new challenge arose. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, the news broke on the television. A report about the fire that had devastated their neighborhood flashed across the screen, detailing the damage and the ongoing investigation into its cause. "Mom, that's our house," Lily exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she watched the footage of their home, now a smoldering ruin. The reporter spoke of the community's efforts to support the families affected, but all Sarah could think about was the life they had lost. "Why did this happen?" Max asked, his voice small and confused. Tom reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Sometimes, things happen that we can't explain. But we're together, and that's what matters. As the report continued, a familiar face appeared on the screen, Clara. The woman Sarah had met at the community center. She was speaking passionately about the need for support for families affected by the fire. Her voice filled with determination. "Together, we can rebuild our lives," Clara said, her eyes shining with hope. "We may have lost our homes, but we haven't lost our spirit." Sarah felt a surge of inspiration as she listened to Clara's words. Perhaps this was the moment they needed to come together as a community, to support one another in their time of need. After dinner, Sarah gathered her family in the living room. "I have an idea," she said, her voice steady. "What if we organize a fundraiser to help all the families affected by the fire? We can invite the community to come together and support each other." Tom nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "That's a great idea, Sarah. We can use the community center and reach out to local businesses for donations." Lily and Max exchanged excited glances, their spirits lifting at the thought of helping others. "Can we have games and food?" Max asked eagerly. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her heart swelling with pride. "We'll make it a fun day for everyone." With renewed determination, the Johnsons set to work organizing the fundraiser. They reached out to Clara, who was thrilled to join forces. Together, they rallied other families and community members, spreading the word about the event. As the day of the fundraiser approached, excitement buzzed in the air. Whiskers, sensing the energy, became a little more playful, darting around the house as if he knew something special was about to happen. On the day of the event, the community center was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and tables were filled with baked goods, crafts, and games. Families gathered, laughter and chatter filling the air as they came together to support one another. Whiskers, ever the star, was a hit among the children. He weaved through the crowd, accepting gentle pets and playful pats. His presence a reminder of the resilience and love that had brought them all together. As the day unfolded, Sarah felt a sense of hope blossoming within her. The community was coming together, united by their shared experiences and the desire to rebuild. But just as the event reached its peak, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. A woman burst through the doors, her face pale and frantic. "Help! My baby is trapped in the car," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her, shock etched on their faces. "Where?" Tom asked, rushing toward her. "Out in the parking lot. I left the windows cracked, but I can't get in." Without hesitation, Tom sprinted outside, followed closely by a group of concerned parents. Sarah's heart raced as she watched, her mind racing with fear. "Whiskers, stay close," she whispered, her eyes darting around for her children. As the crowd gathered outside, the tension was palpable. The woman paced anxiously, her hands wringing together as she waited for news. "Is the baby okay?" Clara asked, her voice steady as she tried to comfort the woman. "I don't know. I just went inside for a minute, and now I can't get in." Tom returned moments later, his face grim. "The doors are locked, and the baby is inside. We need to break a window." Just then, Whiskers, who had been watching from a distance, darted toward the car. He jumped onto the hood, his eyes focused on the window. "Whiskers, no," Sarah called, but the cat was already in motion. With a swift leap, Whiskers landed on the driver's seat, his claws digging into the fabric as he peered inside. The baby, a small girl with curly hair, was crying softly, her tiny fists waving in distress. "Whiskers!" Lily shouted, her eyes wide with concern. But the cat seemed undeterred. He pawed at the window, his instincts kicking in as he tried to get the baby's attention. "Look, he's trying to help," Max exclaimed, pointing at the scene. In that moment, Whisker's actions sparked something within the crowd. Inspired by the cat's bravery, a man stepped forward, determination etched on his face. "I'll break the window," he shouted, grabbing a nearby rock. With a swift motion, he smashed the window, and the crowd gasped as the glass shattered. "Get the baby," Clara urged, her voice filled with urgency. Tom reached inside, carefully unbuckling the car seat and lifting the baby into his arms. The crowd erupted into cheers as the woman rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she took her daughter from Tom. Thank you so much," she cried, her voice choked with emotion. Whiskers, having completed his mission, jumped down from the car and trotted back to Lily and Max, who scooped him up in a flurry of hugs. "You did it, Whiskers! You helped save her!" Lily exclaimed, her eyes shining with pride. As the crowd celebrated the successful rescue, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Whiskers had once again proven his bravery, reminding everyone of the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. That night, as the fundraiser came to a close, the Johnsons returned to their rental home, their hearts full. They had raised enough money to help several families, and the sense of community had never felt stronger. As they settled in for the night, Whiskers curled up beside them, purring softly. "Whiskers, you're our hero," Sarah whispered, her heart swelling with love. And in that moment, surrounded by her family and their feline companion, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by the bonds of love and bravery. The weeks following the fundraiser brought a renewed sense of hope to the Johnson family. They had settled into their rental home, and the community's support had been overwhelming. Clara and the other families had become close friends, and together they began to rebuild their lives, one day at a time. Whiskers, their steadfast feline companion, remained a source of comfort and joy, his playful antics bringing laughter back into their lives. However, as the days turned into weeks, the reality of their situation began to weigh heavily on Sarah. The repairs on their home were taking longer than expected, and the uncertainty of their future loomed over her like a dark cloud. She often found herself staring out the window, lost in thought, while the children played in the backyard. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah received a phone call that would change everything. It was the contractor overseeing the repairs on their home. "Mrs. Johnson, I have some news about your house," he said, his voice serious. "We've encountered some structural issues that will require more time and resources to fix. I'm afraid it's going to take longer than we initially anticipated." Sarah's heart sank. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Another few months at least. I know this is frustrating, but we want to ensure everything is safe for you and your family." As she hung up the phone, tears filled her eyes. She felt a wave of despair wash over her. How could they continue living in limbo? The children needed stability, a place to call home. That night, as the family gathered for dinner, Sarah struggled to keep her emotions in check. The children chatted excitedly about their day, but she could barely focus on their words. Whiskers, sensing her distress, jumped onto her lap, purring softly. "Mom, are you okay?" Lily asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." But as the days turned into weeks, Sarah's facade began to crack. She found herself snapping at the children over small things, her patience wearing thin. Tom noticed the change in her demeanor and tried to reach out, but she often brushed him off, too consumed by her worries. One afternoon, while the children were at school, Sarah sat in the living room, staring blankly at the wall. Whiskers curled up beside her, his warm body a comforting presence. But even his purring couldn't lift the heaviness in her heart. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, jolting her from her thoughts. Sarah jumped up, her heart racing as she rushed toward the sound. When she entered the kitchen, she found a mess of broken dishes scattered across the floor. Whiskers stood in the middle of it all, looking guilty yet curious. "Whiskers, what did you do?" Sarah exclaimed, exasperated. The cat meowed softly, his green eyes wide as if to say, "It wasn't me." In that moment, Sarah felt a surge of frustration. "I can't deal with this right now," she shouted, her voice echoing in the empty house. Whiskers flinched at her tone, his ears flattening against his head. Sarah immediately felt a pang of guilt. She knelt down, reaching out to him. "I'm sorry, Whiskers. I didn't mean to yell. I'm just overwhelmed." As she stroked his fur, she realized how unfair it was to take her frustrations out on him. He had been nothing but loyal and loving through all of this. That evening, after the children returned home, Sarah decided to take a different approach. She gathered them in the living room, her heart heavy but determined to be honest. "Kids, I need to talk to you about something," she began, her voice steady. "I've been feeling really stressed about everything that's happened. I'm sorry if I've been short with you. It's just been hard for me." Lily looked up at her, her eyes filled with understanding. "It's okay, Mom. We're all feeling a little lost." Max nodded, his small face serious. "Yeah, but we have Whiskers. He makes everything better." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love for her children. "You're right. Whiskers has been our little hero. And we're going to get through this together, as a family." As they sat together, Whiskers jumped onto the couch, settling between them. The children giggled, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. But just as they began to relax, the doorbell rang, interrupting their moment. Sarah got up to answer it, her heart racing as she wondered who it could be. When she opened the door, she was met with a familiar face. Clara stood there, her expression serious. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," Clara said, her voice urgent. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked, concern flooding her. "No, it's not. There's been another fire in the neighborhood. It's spreading quickly, and I think we need to evacuate." Panic surged through Sarah. "What do you mean? Is it close to us?" "It's just a few blocks away. The fire department is on their way. But we need to get the kids and go. It's not safe here." Without hesitation, Sarah rushed back inside, her heart pounding. "Kids, we need to go. Now." Lily and Max exchanged frightened glances as they scrambled to their feet. "What's happening?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "There's a fire nearby, and we need to leave the house," Sarah explained, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Whiskers, sensing the urgency, darted around the room, his instincts kicking in. He meowed loudly, as if urging them to hurry. "Grab your things," Tom shouted as he rushed down the stairs, having heard the commotion. In a flurry of activity, the family gathered their essentials, clothes, toys, and Whiskers' food. As they rushed out the door, Sarah felt a wave of dread wash over her. They joined Clara and her family outside, where a crowd had gathered. All eyes fixed on the horizon where dark smoke billowed into the sky. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. "Stay close to me," Sarah instructed her children, her heart racing as she scanned the area for any signs of danger. As they waited, the fire department arrived, their trucks racing down the street. Firefighters jumped into action, setting up hoses and preparing to combat the flames. "Is everyone accounted for?" one of the firefighters shouted, his voice booming over the chaos. "Yes," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. But just as they began to feel a sense of safety, a loud explosion erupted from a nearby house, sending debris flying into the air. The crowd gasped, and Sarah instinctively pulled her children closer, shielding them with her body. "Get back!" a firefighter shouted, urging everyone to move away from the danger zone. In the chaos, Whiskers slipped from Sarah's grasp, darting toward the commotion. "Whiskers! No!" Sarah cried, panic rising in her chest. "Stay here!" Tom shouted, but Sarah couldn't bear the thought of losing their beloved cat. Without thinking, she bolted after him, her heart pounding as she called out, "Whiskers! Come back!" The cat weaved through the crowd, his small frame disappearing into the chaos. Sarah pushed through the throngs of people, her eyes scanning desperately for any sign of him. "Mom, wait!" Lily shouted, but Sarah was already too far gone, her instincts driving her forward. As she reached the edge of the crowd, she spotted Whiskers near a burning house, his fur illuminated by the flames. "Whiskers!" she cried, her voice filled with desperation. The cat seemed to sense her presence, turning to look at her with wide eyes. But just as he started to move toward her, a loud crack echoed through the air. A beam from the house collapsed, sending sparks flying. "Get back!" a firefighter yelled, but Sarah couldn't move. "Whiskers!" she shouted again, her heart racing as she watched the flames grow closer. In that moment, Whiskers sprang into action. He darted toward a nearby tree, his instincts guiding him as he leaped onto a low branch. Sarah's heart soared as she watched him climb higher, his agility allowing him to escape the danger. "Come on, buddy," she urged, her voice filled with hope. But just as Whiskers reached the top of the branch, the tree began to sway dangerously. The flames were spreading, and the heat was becoming unbearable. "Sarah, get back!" Tom shouted, his voice filled with panic. But Sarah couldn't tear her eyes away from Whiskers. "I can't leave him!" she cried, her heart breaking. In that moment, Whiskers made a daring leap from the branch, landing safely on the ground just a few feet away from Sarah. "Whiskers!" she exclaimed, relief flooding through her. But before she could reach him, the ground beneath them shook as another explosion rocked the area. The flames roared, and Sarah felt a wave of heat wash over her. "Run!" Tom shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm and pulling her back. With Whiskers at her heels, they sprinted away from the chaos, the sounds of destruction echoing behind them. As they reached a safe distance, Sarah turned to see the firefighters battling the flames, their determination unwavering. "Is everyone okay?" Clara asked, her voice filled with concern as she joined them. "We're fine," Tom replied, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. Whiskers, panting heavily, nuzzled against Sarah's leg, his presence a comforting reminder of their bond. As they stood together, watching the firefighters work tirelessly to contain the blaze, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for her family and their brave little cat. They had faced danger together, and in that moment, she knew they would always find a way to protect one another. But just as they began to feel a sense of relief, a loud crack echoed through the air, and Sarah's heart dropped. The roof of the burning house collapsed, sending a plume of smoke and debris into the sky. "Get back!" a firefighter shouted, urging everyone to move further away. As the chaos unfolded, Sarah held her children close, her heart racing. They had faced so much already, and now, the threat of danger loomed once again. In that moment, she realized that their journey was far from over. They would need to summon every ounce of courage and strength to navigate the challenges ahead. But as she looked down at Whiskers, who was now sitting calmly at her feet, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they would face whatever came next. united by their love and the extraordinary bond they shared. The chaos of the fire began to subside as the firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the flames. The acrid smell of smoke hung heavy in the air, mingling with the sounds of sirens and the crackling of embers. Sarah held her children close, their small bodies trembling against her as they watched the scene unfold. Whiskers, ever vigilant, remained at her feet, his green eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. As the firefighters battled the blaze, Sarah felt a mix of gratitude and fear. They had narrowly escaped disaster once again. But the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her heart. The community had already suffered so much, and now another fire threatened to tear them apart. "Mom, is everyone going to be okay?" Lily asked, her voice small and filled with concern. "I hope so, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "The firefighters are doing everything they can." Tom stood beside her, his expression serious as he watched the firefighters work. "We need to check on Clara and her family," he said, glancing around the crowd. "They were right behind us when we left." "Good idea," Sarah agreed, her heart racing as she scanned the area for Clara. As they made their way through the crowd, they spotted Clara standing with her husband, Mark, and their two children, Mia and Jake. Relief washed over Sarah as she approached them. "Clara, are you all okay?" she called out, her voice filled with concern. Clara turned, her face pale but determined. "We're fine. Just shaken up. I'm so glad you're all safe." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "We need to stick together. This community has been through so much already." As they stood together, the reality of their situation began to sink in. The fire had spread quickly, and the damage was extensive. Sarah could see the fear in the eyes of the other families gathered around them, each one grappling with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "Do you think we'll have to evacuate again?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, sweetie," Clara replied, kneeling down to comfort her daughter. "But we'll be together, and that's what matters." As the firefighters continued to battle the flames, Sarah felt a surge of determination. They had faced so much already, and she knew they needed to come together as a community once again. "Let's organize a meeting," she suggested, her voice steady. "We need to figure out how we can support each other through this." Tom nodded in agreement. "We can use the community center again. It's a safe space for everyone." Clara's eyes lit up with hope. "That's a great idea. We can share resources and make sure everyone has what they need." As they began to gather the other families, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced adversity before, and together, they could overcome this challenge as well. The meeting at the community center was filled with a mix of emotions, fear, uncertainty, but also hope. Families gathered, sharing their experiences and offering support to one another. Whiskers, ever the comforter, wandered through the crowd, accepting gentle pets and providing a sense of calm amidst the chaos. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice steady as she addressed the group. "We've been through so much together, and it's important that we support one another during this difficult time." Clara stood beside her, nodding in agreement. "We need to come up with a plan to help those who have been affected by the recent fires. We can organize donations, provide meals, and offer shelter to those in need." As the families brainstormed ideas, Sarah felt a sense of unity forming among them. They were all in this together, and together they would find a way to rebuild their lives. Over the next few days, the community rallied around one another. Donations poured in from local businesses and residents, providing food, clothing, and supplies for those affected by the fires. Sarah and Clara worked tirelessly to coordinate efforts, ensuring that everyone had what they needed. Whiskers became a beloved figure in the community center, his playful antics bringing smiles to the faces of children and adults alike. He would curl up in laps, purring softly as families shared their stories and supported one another. One afternoon, as Sarah sorted through donations, she overheard a conversation between two mothers. "I don't know how we're going to get through this," one of them said, her voice filled with despair. "We have to stay strong for our kids," the other replied. "They need us now more than ever." Sarah felt a pang of empathy for them. She understood the weight of their struggles, the fear of the unknown. But she also knew that they had each other, and that made all the difference. As the days turned into weeks, the community began to heal. Families found temporary housing, and the support they received helped ease the burden of their losses. Sarah felt a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. But she also knew that the road ahead would be long. One evening, as the sun set over Maplewood, Sarah gathered her family in the backyard of their rental home. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and purple. Whiskers lounged nearby, basking in the fading sunlight. "Let's take a moment to appreciate how far we've come," Sarah said, her voice filled with warmth. "We've faced so much, but we're still here, together." Lily and Max nodded, their faces brightening at the thought. "And we have Whiskers," Max exclaimed, reaching down to scratch the cat behind the ears. "Yeah, he's our hero," Lily added, her eyes sparkling with admiration. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love for her family. "He really is. We wouldn't have made it through without him." As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced darkness, but they had also found light in each other and in their community. But just as they began to relax, a loud knock echoed from the front door, interrupting their moment. Who could that be? Tom wondered, glancing toward the door. "I'll check," Sarah said, rising to her feet. When she opened the door, she was met with a familiar face. Clara stood there, her expression serious. "Sarah, you need to see this," Clara said, her voice urgent. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "Come quick," Clara urged, turning to lead the way. As they hurried outside, Sarah felt a sense of dread wash over her. What could be happening now? When they reached the front yard, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A group of firefighters stood nearby, their faces grim. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "We need to talk to you," one of the firefighters said, his tone serious. "About what?" Clara pressed, her eyes wide with concern. "There's been another fire in the area, and we believe it may be connected to the previous incidents," the firefighter explained. "We need to evacuate the neighborhood as a precaution." Panic surged through Sarah. "What? Again?" "Yes, we're taking every precaution to ensure everyone's safety," the firefighter replied. "We need you to gather your things and leave the area immediately." As the reality of the situation sank in, Sarah felt a wave of fear wash over her. They had just begun to find stability, and now they were being uprooted once again. "Mom, what's happening?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart," Sarah reassured her, though her heart raced with uncertainty. "Let's get everyone together," Tom said, his voice steady. "We'll make sure everyone is safe." As they rushed to gather their belongings, Sarah felt a mix of emotions, fear, frustration, but also determination. They had faced so much already, and they would face this together as well. With Whiskers safely tucked under her arm, Sarah led her family out of the house, joining Clara and the other families as they prepared to evacuate. The sense of community was palpable, and despite the fear that loomed over them, there was also a sense of resilience. As they drove away from their neighborhood, Sarah glanced back at their home, her heart heavy with sadness. But she knew that as long as they had each other, they would find a way to rebuild once again. The evacuation was swift, and the Johnson family found themselves once again at the community center, a place that had become both a refuge and a symbol of resilience. As they settled into the familiar surroundings, Sarah felt a mix of emotions swirling within her: fear, uncertainty, but also a profound sense of gratitude for the community that had rallied around them time and time again. The atmosphere in the center was charged with a sense of urgency. Families gathered, sharing news and updates about the fires that had plagued their neighborhood. Whiskers, ever the comforter, wandered through the crowd, offering his presence as a soothing balm to anxious hearts. Children laughed and played, their spirits lifted by the familiar feline who had become a beloved figure in their lives. "Mom, do you think we'll ever go back home?" Lily asked, her voice small as she clutched Whiskers tightly. Sarah knelt down beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I believe we will, sweetheart. It might take some time, but we'll get through this together." Max, who had been quietly observing, chimed in, "And we'll have Whiskers with us, right? He's our hero." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Yes, he is. He's been so brave, just like all of us." As the days turned into weeks, the community center became a hub of activity. Volunteers worked tirelessly to provide meals, clothing, and support for those affected by the fires. Sarah and Clara took charge of organizing resources, ensuring that everyone had what they needed. The bond between the families grew stronger, forged in the fires of adversity. One evening, as they gathered for a community meeting, Sarah stood before the group, her heart filled with gratitude. "I want to thank each and every one of you for your strength and support. We've faced so much together, and it's incredible to see how we've come together as a community." Clara nodded in agreement. "We've learned that even in the darkest times, we can find light in each other. Together, we can rebuild our lives." As the families shared their stories, Sarah felt a sense of hope blossoming within her. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had also discovered the power of unity and resilience. Whiskers, perched on a nearby table, watched the proceedings with his usual calm demeanor, a silent reminder of the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. One day, as they were sorting through donations, Sarah received a call from the contractor overseeing the repairs on their home. "Mrs. Johnson, I have good news," he said, his voice filled with optimism. "We've made significant progress, and I believe your home will be ready for you to return in a few weeks." Tears of relief filled Sarah's eyes. "Thank you so much. We've been waiting for this news." As she hung up the phone, she felt a wave of joy wash over her. She rushed to find Tom, her heart racing with excitement. "Tom, we can go home soon." His face lit up with a smile, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. "That's amazing news. We'll finally be back where we belong." The news spread quickly through the community center, and the families erupted into cheers. They had faced so much together, and now they could finally see a light at the end of the tunnel. As the days passed, preparations began for their return home. The Johnsons packed their belongings, excited to reclaim their space and start anew. Whiskers seemed to sense the change, his playful energy returning as he darted around the center, bringing smiles to everyone he encountered. On the day they returned to their home, Sarah felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nostalgia, and a hint of apprehension. The house stood before them, a testament to their resilience. Though it bore the scars of the fire, it was still their home. As they stepped inside, the familiar scent of their space enveloped them. The walls were freshly painted, and the repairs had transformed the house into a safe haven. Once again, Whiskers bounded through the door, exploring every corner with renewed curiosity. "Look, Whiskers, this is our home," Max exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. Lily giggled, her heart swelling with joy. "We can make new memories here." Sarah knelt down, wrapping her arms around her children. "Yes, we can. And we'll always remember how strong we were together." As they settled back into their home, the Johnsons embraced the opportunity to create new memories. They decorated the walls with family photos, filled the rooms with laughter, and made space for the love that had carried them through the darkest of times. One evening, as they gathered in the living room, Sarah looked around at her family, her heart full. "I'm so grateful for all of you. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger on the other side." Tom nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "And we couldn't have done it without each other, and without Whiskers." The cat, lounging comfortably on the couch, seemed to bask in the love surrounding him. He purred contentedly, a symbol of the extraordinary bond that had carried them through their trials. As the sun set outside, casting a warm glow over their home, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced adversity, but they had also discovered the power of love, community, and resilience. In that moment, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by the bonds of family and the unwavering spirit of their beloved cat, Whiskers. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Sarah whispered a silent promise to herself and her family. They would always cherish the extraordinary relationships that had shaped their lives, and they would continue to find strength in one another, no matter what the future held. Thanks for joining us on this journey with our furry champions. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, don't forget to subscribe to Furry Champions. Hit that like button and share with friends to spread the love for our furry friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, celebrate the amazing bond between humans and animals. See you in the next video.